Thank, thank you. Thank you so much, Lori. Thank you to Lori and the Philadelphia Photo Arts Center for inviting me to share my work as part of the Thursday Night Photo Talk series. It's great to be here. And when I say here, I mean in Normal, Illinois. And I wish I was in the same room with everyone here. Nevertheless, I thank everyone for tuning in. Yeah, it's nice to be part of the larger photo community, and I'm glad that we have these online events and opportunities to connect with each other. Even though we might be a little zoomed out, I still appreciate everyone's presence, virtual or otherwise. So tonight, I'm going to show some work based on my interest in the Filipino diaspora. Also, to any Filipinos out there, happy Filipino American History Month. I'm not only saying that because my birthday was last week. As an artist, I've been long interested in the themes of work and home, and I've explored how labor and housing reflect and often dictate crucial life choices, from public housing in Chicago to idyllic government planned communities across the US to the lives of overseas Filipino workers in various parts of the world. And I'm interested in exploring the interrelated roles of work and place in the lives of communities of individuals. And I'll start sharing my screen here now. And share screen, PowerPoint, ta-da, and ta-da. Very good. So here is an image from Subic Bay in the Philippines that I took in my Fulbright Fellowship in 2015. And, you know, this was something that I came upon while just photographing in the Philippines. And all along the way, I wanted to shoot, look for metaphors of loss and metaphors for longing as I was focusing on the lives of overseas Filipino workers and their families. At first, I'd like to set up some context about my influences and interests and provide a kind of a meandering and hopefully meaningful roadmap of my working process. When I first moved to the Midwest in 2002, I started photographing public housing in Chicago from a number of different approaches, ranging from boxing rings to the lives of its residents. And around this time, I started taking classes at Columbia College Chicago, where I met one of my long-term mentors, Dawood Bey, who taught us the importance of artistic intention and the ability to transcend differences, regardless of whether or not a photographer is looking inside or outside of their own community. I also find inspiration in August Sanders' skillful portraiture of the cross-section of 1920s German society, and Melissa Ann Pinney's wide-ranging and metaphorical approach to feminine identity. These influences and my interest in the built environment led me to do a project called Outside Public Housing, where I photographed and interviewed a matrix of people whose professions were connected to the public housing industry. So I interviewed and photographed demolition workers and real estate workers and lawyers and construction workers. And I was developing an interest in just the complex narratives of lives of people who lived in public housing, and wanted to depict people who were being dispersed and marginalized, and wanted to take pictures of people who were connected to place and connected to each other. So these were in the south side of Chicago and the west side of Chicago, and also the north side of Chicago. This is from Lathrop Homes. This previous one was from Stateway Gardens, which was near the White Sox Stadium. And this is on the north side. That's the last complex of Cabrini Green on the left. And the sidewalk was a new sidewalk that is meant for the new housing that was to be built there, which was mixed income townhouses. And the more I photographed around public housing, I was drawn to the idea of how place can shape people's lives, and extended this thought to the ideas and intentions behind planned communities, and learned about the Greenbelt Towns, which were 3 New Deal planned communities of Greenbelt, Maryland, Green Hills, Ohio, and Greendale, Wisconsin. And they were intended to be worker communities that combine the best social advantages of community elements and the best natural elements of the country. And I published this in my monograph, New Deal Utopias, in 2017. And throughout each project, I'm interested in investigating my subject's relationship to the world. So this is my parents. I don't know if you can see my arrow, but this is my mom sitting on the car here. This is my dad. As a child of Filipino immigrants, I have a long abiding and deeply held interest in what makes people move from one place to another. So this was a slide from 1967 when they lived in the Philippines, and that's my father in the foreground and my mother with the red pants on their Impala. And I was looking at, just kind of studying this picture, and I saw the label, I don't know, the car label, SM Rose from the Bronx, New York. And this is in the Philippines. I was like, I don't know what was involved in getting a Chevy Impala from New York to the Philippines, but somehow it ended up there. And I ended up watching a commercial on YouTube last night, and SM Rose was just a car dealership in the Bronx. All that is to say is that my parents met in New York on their medical residency at Fordham University. And this picture was taken in Bicol in the Philippines. It's a rural province in the Philippines. My father grew up. And at the bottom of this building was a medical clinic that they were setting up. And they were part of this brain drain of physicians in the 1960s, when there was a shortage of medical professionals in the US, and they were recruiting from around the world, from developing countries, for nurses and doctors to work in the US. And eventually they would, after going back to the Philippines, they would settle in the US in the late 60s, early 70s, where my siblings and I grew up. And I wasn't aware of this phenomenon until I was an adult. And I'm embarrassed to say that I didn't visit the Philippines until I was 35. Like I was like a man. I was a man when I visited. And I didn't really get the opportunity, or didn't have the desire, until I was a kind of a young adult. And maybe that's normal for first generation kids, but my cultural literacy of the Philippines is quite low, partly out of resistance as a child, but I also think in large part due to the tendency of first generation immigrant parents to prioritize assimilation over everything. So even though I didn't learn Tagalog as a child, I did grow up with one of the most recognizable symbols of the Filipino diaspora, the balikbayan box, which is this there's a large cardboard box that is a very familiar sight in Filipino households. And these giant cardboard boxes took up enormous amounts of space in my parents' living room and garage. And I knew that my parents were sending things back home to the Philippines, but I never realized what the boxes represented until 2005. During my first trip to the Philippines. And I took this picture in 2015, but it was this conversation that I had with my cousin in 2005 that I was meeting for the first time. And he says, we were at a party, and he says, "Oh, Jason, you must be Jason. You must be the balikbayan." And, I don't know Tagalog, sorry. And so I said, what do you mean, like the box? And he was very patient, and he explained to me that that balik bayan means balik means return, and bayan means home or country. So I was the person who was returning home. So the box is can also be applied to balik bayan can be applied to people and the box itself. So my cousin's comment made this really deep impression on me, and I always knew I was from the Philippines, but I was never considered the Philippines my home. I knew that Filipinos were just one wave of many waves of immigrants to make their home in the US, but I was unaware of the millions of Filipinos that were scattered all over the world, or the billions of dollars that Filipinos overseas contribute to the Philippine economy. And it's this tension and curiosity that's the point of departure for my project on the Filipino diaspora and its various manifestations. And it's what led to my interest in overseas Filipino workers, a truly global workforce of men and women who spend years, sometimes decades abroad, working for their families back home. And I wanted to learn more what home means to Filipinos, not only for their workers themselves while they're abroad, but also for those that experience the benefits and losses of the family member who's absent. My goal is for my images to evoke metaphors of longing and loss, but also to humanize the invisible labor that's performed by OFWs. For the record, my parents were not OFWs. OFWs are considered contract workers whose papers need to be renewed by the Philippine government. And my parents settled in the US and became naturalized citizens. So they'd be considered permanent migrants. It's a kind of a different category. Oh, and I can keep my eye on the chat box if you want. If I can I keep my eye on the chat box? I'm not sure if you want me to. You can feel free to ask questions during the talk if there's a break. But I don't mind this being kind of an organic conversation as people if people have questions. So this license plate in Illinois, it has the name of a town, Mulanay, on it. It's the license plate of Toto Baronia. He's the owner of T-Bar International, and it's the name of the city where he's from in Quezon province. And Toto is the owner of T-Bar, that balik bayan box company that was being pushed by the guy in the other picture. And the company itself is based in Joliet, Illinois, in central Illinois, just maybe an hour away from Normal. So that's the operations on the US side, and on the Philippine side, there's a warehouse in Quezon City. Let's see. And so I went to the warehouse in Quezon City, and I made some pictures there. I made pictures of the workers. I made pictures of the warehouse itself, and it was strange to be standing amidst hundreds of these cardboard boxes that made the journey from central Illinois to this modest warehouse in the middle of the Philippines. And each one of these boxes was packed by a family, half a world away. And why does this exist? It's inexpensive. All the boxes come, although the boxes come in various sizes, the dimensions are 28 by 18 by 16, which is the size of like a large micro fridge. And those are the exact dimensions for checked airline luggage, should the box be brought home by someone on a plane. And the boxes, they come in these standard sizes, but it usually ranges between $60 and $90 to ship that box. And the catch is that it takes like 2 months to get there. It goes there by by shipping container, then by train, and then to California. And then from California, goes on the slow boat to Taiwan, from Taiwan to Manila. So don't send anything perishable. Don't send like cheese. So the emphasis is on volume and connection, and not necessarily speed. So lots of Filipinos end up packing their Christmas presents in October, in time for arrival in December. So it's kind of high season. So that's why it's so inexpensive, because it takes a long time to get there. So these are some portraits that I made, and it's all manual labor. There's like no conveyor. There's barely any conveyor belts, or it's all done by hand trucks. No forklifts, no scanners, and the way they keep track of things is just by cell phone picture, and then they'll send the picture as proof, as kind of a record. This is someone who I met in Dubai as I was carrying out my project there, and similar to wiring money back back home in the form of remittances, sending balikbayan box is a way to stay connected with family. So some objects are sent as souvenirs, particularly the country of origin. Other items have no particular cultural value except for the sender's thoughtfulness. A Filipino in Milan might send some pasta and jars of sauce. A Filipino in Dubai might pack a box with dishwasher or tubes of toothpaste. So I thought this was like really, really, it's thoughtful and practical, but I just thought it's really strange that every time someone will walk out the door, they're thinking of their family, and so it's like, you know what, they'll need toothpaste, and I'm gonna get them toothpaste. When they brush their teeth, they're gonna be thinking about me. I'm gonna get some Ensure protein balance from Dubai, and I'm thinking about my mother with osteoporosis, and I can't be there now, but when they drink this Ensure, they'll think of me. It's just, maybe this is just a reminder to do the dishes at home. This is a dishwasher detergent that was sent home in the balikbayan box. And I was taking these pictures in this person's bedroom. And there were four people. There were two bunk beds of adults in this small room, and I turned this into a little studio. And I should like showing this to my students, as far as like, you can make a studio anywhere. So I'm a little obsessed with these boxes. I turned one of the boxes into a camera obscura, and I'll turn anything into a camera. We're photographers. And I was thinking that there are already vessels for, to stay connected with family. Maybe I can make this a vessel for memories and capturing someone's, character. This is Kevin Nadal, an acquaintance of mine. This was taken at the Filipino-American National History Society conference a couple of years ago, and he had posed. He's a legal scholar in New York and LGBTQ activist. So during my Fulbright, I traveled to two cities. I mean, we were based in Manila, but I found out about these two cities from a colleague at Illinois Wesleyan named Teddy Amalosa. And she set me up with her sister, who lives in I believe is Mabini, Batangas, and she helped me. She was very helpful in guiding me through and connecting me with people who I needed to photograph, wanted to photograph. And these two cities, their nicknames were Little Italy, like Mabini, Batangas, and Alaminos, Laguna. They were nicknamed Little Italy because of the, not only because there are so many overseas Filipino workers that originate from there and they migrate to Italy, but also the style of architecture is starting to look like Italy because of all the money that is flowing back into the Philippines. Filipinos are building new houses that resemble Mediterranean architecture. So I thought it was really bizarre. It was totally bizarre that the Philippine built environment is being transformed by these foreign remittances. And the crazy thing is that they sit empty for the most part. A lot of them sit empty because they're toiling away on foreign shores. So it's a little bizarre and ironic and tragic at the same time. And I was able to go inside some of these houses, and it's hard to kind of document absence. But I think that there are these kind of metaphors like this boxed up dryer. It's obviously not being used. That it's like waiting for its owner to come back from work. I also think it's strange that it's called like American Home, like obviously evoking some sort of superior product because it's labeled it's from America. This is Sonia de Mesa, and she has worked as a nanny in Italy for 17 years. And I was fortunate enough to catch her while she was on her month-long break home in Alaminos, Laguna. And this house was incredible. It was like large and beautiful by any standards, and dwarfs traditional provincial houses in this town. And she comes back once a year to visit her son Mirko. And they were living in Como, Italy, and they were having difficulties because he didn't have room to run around and play when he was a child. And I'm sure there's lots of room in Italy to play, but maybe not when your mother is employed as a full-time nanny. So when Mirko was 7, he asked his mother if he could go back to the Philippines, like alone, and stay with other family. So the kid's 7, and he's like, you know what? I don't want to live here. I'm going to go back and live with my auntie. And I think that's that it's a crazy situation. I think it's a crazy situation, but it's also a situation that is playing itself over and over and over again. Not only, I'm sure this is not particular to the Philippines. I'm I always hear stories about remittances from Mexico and it propping up the economy there. So he came back. And he and Sonia's house largely sits empty throughout the year. And Mirko, he lives in a small kind of room off to the side. And I asked him, I was like, why don't you live in this big, beautiful house? And he says, I like my small room because it's easier to clean. So he's very, very practical. And Sonia was very proud to show off this imported Italian porcelain, the bidet and the toilet, and it's not like I was like looking to document commodes, but she was like, oh, this is imported from Italy. And so again, along with the architecture, people are bringing home these souvenirs, whether it be very practical or decorative or whatever. But it feels like the Philippines is changing because of this kind of cross-pollination. And unused furniture kind of covered. And Sonia was pointing out that she has siblings who own houses around her, but they're all empty because they are also in Italy. So this is just a few of these empty houses that are around this town. And I traveled to another town called Mabini, Batangas, and had another person show me around. And a lot of these houses get taken care of by caretakers who walk around and turn on the lights at night to make it look like someone's home. So these are, nice modern houses, and and they're often paid for by this foreign money. However, I was talking to like a government official person, and she kind of bristles at the label Little Italy because it sounds like they are really cosmopolitan and wealthy, but just because they have nice houses doesn't necessarily mean that there are good jobs. It's just like, and she was feeling that she wished that they would invest in education and jobs. But to be fair, I think the building of a home, I think, has a lot of symbolism in it as far as marking a place in the community that they are going to return to, and for them not to forget about them, for the community not to forget about them. So this is a jeepney. It's a kind of a form of semi-public transportation, and it's all decked out with all sorts of decorations. And you can see that there's so many tributes to money coming from abroad. Duomo Church, Milan, and Rome, Italy, and this was in Manila, the Pride of Dubai. And I asked the cab driver, "Oh, did you work in Dubai?" And he goes, "Oh no, my boss did." But the owner of the cab company worked in Dubai, and now he owns his own cab company. So, as I was mentioning before, there's this kind of juxtaposition between the old and the new in this photo, and there's a lot of as far as the phenomenon of OFWs, there's a whole culture around it between educating the families with financial literacy so they don't just blow all the money that's coming back in, but also there's a sense of I would almost equate it to PTSD, where when a family members come back, no one's really used to each other because they've been abroad for so long. And there are sometimes, there are soap operas, Philippine soap operas that are based around this phenomena where there's infidelity abroad and home because people are apart for so long. So it's almost like it's just it's just life of people being away from each other and parents being away from children. So there's a huge social cost for this, and they have social services specifically for OFWs. And back to housing, this is, I was thinking about the Filipinos who don't have a home, and their home is at sea. And there's a long history of maritime Filipinos who work on whether it be cruise ships or tankers, and the government has set up this community, Seamen's Village, where they have families that will houses where sailors will come back home and use this as their home. This is the community center. So they have this enormous mural of this this person working on a ship on the right with their hard hat. The hat's covering his heart, and they have the kids running towards the father and the mom home. So there isn't much I need to explain what's going on here, but it is it's nice that they have this community center, but the fact that this is all too relatable, I think, is quite tragic. And there's a bureaucracy and a formality to all this, where overseas Filipino workers need to apply for working papers through the government, and the government has relationships with other countries, as far as this person can work in Italy for 2 years at a time, and then they have to come back and renew their contracts, or work as a pipe fitter in Russia, or just as a barber, and they have all these job listings, and 3,000 to 5,000 people go through this this room, and this is one of many rooms in the Philippine Overseas Employment Administration. So I don't know what's going on with COVID over there, but I'm sure that things are more spread out these days. These were passports for men applying for construction jobs in Korea. This is the household service workers lane. So there's a whole bureaucracy around this phenomenon. Clocks on the wall. I'm sure this is only a few of the cities where Filipinos are located. So I think it feels like they need to do more than be praying to San Lorenzo. San Lorenzo Ruiz, the patron saint of OFWs and Filipino migrants. So it feels like the government, I feel like the government should be doing more to create jobs at home. I'm sure it's easier said than done. But in the last few years, the only news that's coming out of the Philippines is these extrajudicial killings on drug dealers. And it's like $110 for a drug user, $440 for a drug dealer. Like these are like contract killings, and sometimes personally dispersed by the town's mayor, according to Human Rights Watch. So it's really kind of a messy situation. I traveled to Hong Kong, and at the suggestion of a friend and colleague, Mark Sheldon, who teaches at the Chinese University of Hong Kong, teaches poli-sci there. And when he learned that we were going to the Philippines, and I had an interest in OFWs, he's like, oh, Jason, you need to come to Hong Kong while you're over here. Come on a Sunday, and you can see what OFWs do in Hong Kong on their day off. So there's a little Manila in Hong Kong, and there's a little shopping center where people file remittances on their day off. There's banks, there's clothing stores, and another part of the city, there is a section for Indonesian workers, and they were gathering in a park, and they were having this beauty contest. It was really amazing. I was like, oh my gosh, why aren't the Filipinos doing that? Why are they gathering? But they were gathering, doing karaoke. It was very, very nice also, but also sad. The domestic workers were everywhere. They were just everywhere, and they were singing and cheering this person along. It's all women. It's all women, and this is just. I was only in a couple blocks. This is the central banking district. So this is everywhere. They were everywhere that other people weren't on a Sunday. So these are the folks who are taking care of people's kids while they're off making their money in the banks. So I was just kind of looking out for scenes like this where it's just like this pulling the curtain, and it's just kind of revealing the artifice behind it. And these kind of tragic juxtapositions of people, they're not camping out, they're just there for the day, like the afternoon, the afternoon and the evening until curfew, and that's what they called it. And they were picnicking in these cardboard boxes, and at 7 o'clock they have to go home back to their employers. So it goes on and on and on. And this scene reminded me of Albert Stieglitz's picture, the steerage, where you have the upper class deck of the person with the hat looking down on the lower class passengers. Kind of this gilded cage up top. So I had the opportunity to live in Spain when my wife Joanne was leading a study abroad program there, and I wanted to connect with Filipino communities in Barcelona, as well as I also got the chance to travel to Italy and also Dubai, and I found these communities very supportive of each other, and they were doing like lots of song and dance and lots of food. I think that is a common thing among lots of cultures to kind of bring people together, and also certainly religion. And there's all sorts of celebrations to kind of for cultural pride. And I thought this was really interesting because this is something that I did not grow up with. And maybe it's because we were just on the suburbs of Long Island, and this is like the heart of Barcelona. Maybe this was happening in the middle of New York City. But I thought it was really interesting that they were doing all sorts of cultural kind of reinforcement. And of course, food. So. And I like taking pictures of, and I went to the masses in Barcelona, and they are, the church attendance is down, except for the Filipinos, and I think this is happening in Italy also. And they had like formal masses. They had many masses in Tagalog, so they had like 2 or 3 masses per Sunday, like in Tagalog, which I thought was like super interesting. And and I couldn't understand it. I'm sorry, Mom. I think my mom is on the call, so I think these are folks from Dubai that got a chance to connect with, and supposedly I read that that 20% of Dubai is Filipino workers, and I didn't get to see the Burj Khalifa. I saw it from a distance, but I think wherever I go, I'm just looking for for these little communities, and not so much the tourist attractions. So there's this Jollibee. This is a national chain in the Philippines, and this was in Dubai. There's one in Chicago. This is like the signifier of a Filipino community. Workers in Dubai, restaurant workers in Dubai. There's someone working at a museum, souvenir shop in Dubai. And this was someone who was coming back from a basketball game. And there, where I was staying in Dubai, there was a basketball court outside, and just around the clock, there were men just playing basketball to all hours, and which was not too surprising since basketball is incredibly popular in the Philippines. And this is really weird. This is a place called Miracle Garden, and the only way I show this is because this structure won the Guinness Book of World Records for largest flower arrangement. It's in the shape of a Emiratis airliner, and it's just this kind of curiosity in Dubai, this tourist attraction garden, and everyone who was working there was from the Philippines. And as I was taking pictures, I it turns out that these people were married. I mean, there were workers everywhere, and I was like, if you're married and you have children, it's like, who is taking care of your? So this is an example of two parents being away, and then and the kids being raised by another family member. And this is a person named Jay Buhian, who brought me around Dubai, and he was one of a handful of people living in this apartment, and there's this kind of makeshift walls that lead you through the hallway, and it's really tight quarters. Because it's cheaper, and you just need to do what you need to do to get by. These are these are rice cookers for 8 roommates. This is all young people living maybe for the first time on their own, and I thought it was just a funny thing to see. 8 of them, because they're all maybe working at all odd hours, and they're all eating by themselves. And this is in Milan, where I photographed workers there too. And I was connected there by the person, Sonia, who was in Alaminos. I was just looking for, I don't want to make this sound like a scavenger hunt or something like that, just like seeking out whatever's Filipino. But I was seeking some sort of connection in the same way that they are seeking the connection, as far as finding company with each other. And this is at the consulate in Milan. And this is the Philippine national hero, a bust of Jose Rizal. This is on the street in Milan. This is balut that someone was selling. Also in Italy, at a picnic. And these are my last few slides here. This is Michael Lopez, who is a master cortador. He's a master kind of cutter of jamón ibérico in Spain. This is in Madrid. And at the time, he was telling me he's like the only Filipino to kind of achieve this level of kind of expertise in Spain. So they Cinco Jotas, the company, will fly him all over the place to cut their ham. So and I was fortunate enough to eat some of some of the stuff he cut. So I was thinking about, again, August Sanders and Dawood Bey, as far as like their engagement with their subjects, and trying not to, turn them into curiosities, and trying to transcend, even though I am Filipino, I still felt like I was getting to know Filipinos. This was a new phenomenon, and I was just kind of exploring this thing, and they probably thought that I was. Actually, a lot of the time, people did not believe I was Filipino. I'm not sure what vibe they were getting. I don't know if it was the big American flag hat that I was wearing, or no. But I'm sure the second I opened my mouth, they're like, "Who is this? Who is this? This brown gringo? who is this person who with a camera, and why is he interested in our lives?" And I don't know. I think that's just like any other subject matter as far as being a photographer. But the for me to go through this kind of every time and explain myself was a little exhausting at points. But I didn't mind doing it. I mean, it tired me out, but I liked connecting with people who I should have been connected with. And I think it was language. I wish if I knew Tagalog, it would have made my experience just much deeper, because people are just looking for connections instead of like a barrier. And to have this like this first world dude flaunting his English, I think people felt a little insecure about that. So I'm going to start to wrap up here. These are some banners that I saw all around the Philippines. These kind of tarpaulin banners, and I thought they're really, really odd. I mean, they're announcing all sorts of accomplishments like politicians' victories or congratulations from kindergarten, all sorts of public service announcements, leave a ballet school, free contraceptive implant, all sorts of stuff, all sorts of fun stuff. And I'm guessing that they used tarpaulin because it rains so much in the Philippines. And I've been printing these things out on, printing a lot of these images out on commercial tarpaulin, bringing it to a commercial printer, and kind of exploring the photographic materials. And they're very hardy. They're very hardy materials, and they can withstand a lot, even though these are in a library. But I was interested in kind of elevating this humble material to something that people can spend some time on instead of being purely practical. And and sometimes a lot of the tarpaulins are reused and repurposed as roofs over these motorized tricycles. So it has like this this feeling of reclamation also. And this is my last slide here. Recently, I've been thinking about how can I make work about the Philippines while being in Central Illinois? Like, how can I, if I don't have access to a lot of Filipinos, how can I keep this project up? And it turns out, it was just a quick story. I was at the American Embassy in the Philippines for an event, a Fulbright event, and someone, I introduced myself to someone, and this person said, it was Reblando. It's like, I know that name. And I laughed. I said, I'm like, of course you know my name. I am the world famous Jason Reblando. And so, later, this person comes up to me and she says, oh, I just remembered. Reblando was a name of one of the reporters who got massacred. I was like, what are you talking about? So she said, she told me in 2009, there was a group of like 35 journalists and like 17 other people attached to this coterie of people. They were covering a political event. They were covering a politician who was going to register to be on the ballot, and they were just messing around with the wrong guy. This guy wanted to get on the wrong ballot, and this political thug who is running that area. They were ready. They killed the politicians. No, they killed the politician's wife, I think. They killed all the journalists, and they were ready with a Caterpillar backhoe, and they buried them in a shallow grave. And it was like this. It was just a disaster. And one of the reporters' names was Bong Reblando. He was an AP reporter. one of the 32 journalists who were murdered in this convoy. So, it was called the Maguindano massacre, and he was trying to file election paperwork. So I had these barongs that my father passed away 3 years ago, and he had all these barongs in his closet that I took from his closet instead of just kind of donating them. And the barong is this fine fibered, it's made of pineapple fiber, and it's this formal shirt that that people wear to weddings. I should have worn my barong right now. That people wear to weddings or funerals or any formal occasion. The government gives barongs to visitors. I remember there was a picture of Bill Clinton wearing a barong when he visited the Philippines. And I was thinking that I would make some Van Dyke Browns of these shirts to kind of commemorate not only my dad, but also these victims of this massacre. And I have almost 20 or 30 barongs of like this. So I want to kind of line them up like one would line up boots for lost soldiers, and maybe raise some sort of journalist awareness danger month or something like that. And it's been an interesting process to kind of, I know a little about alternative processes, but this is just a good way to try and stay connected to the project. So that's like my current project right now. Great. So that is it. That is my talk.
Thank you.
Yeah.
How do you say it?
A little long.
Salamat po.
Oh, salamat po is thank you. Salamat po.
So thank you. That was incredibly interesting and really great to see. I have a million questions, but I wanted to read some questions from some of the people in the group. What are the living conditions in the foreign countries? That's from Joan. For the workers. What are the living conditions in foreign countries for the workers?
Well, it varies. It varies. There are some situations where the employers are abusive. And you have a domestic worker living in this little space in the kitchen, and maybe the next building over, and there's all these social services set up for situations like this, and the next building over, you can have a person who treats them like family. So it really varies. And often there's little to no recourse for the person who's being abused, which is a huge problem. So the rights of the rights vary from country to country. I don't think Filipinos have voting rights in Hong Kong, and as far as this kind of exchange where they need to re-up their contract every 2 years, they have to go back. It's almost like if you stayed one day over, you might be, you'd be permanent or something like that. However, I know that there's a lot of people who really value their workers, like au pairs and nannies, and it just varies from situation to situation. Yeah.
Feel free to ask a question, but I have one. It feels like I'm swimming in all of the points of the directions that your work takes. I mean, it's a lot. I feel like it's a lot to take in, and I'm just wondering where you are in this project and how you are going to guide it into, what is it, where are you guiding it right now? Because it's probably going to change as you keep working.
It's I have, I think about it a lot as far as kind of an overarching, I know it's very complex, and it's not like I can visit every country in the world. So I want to paint it in large metaphors. But I think I'm always drawn to pictures that deal with place and that deal with a sense of place and connecting it uh, to how it affects people's lives. Um, so it's kind of hard to say, but I think uh, I don't want to be too removed from it, even though you know, while I was in the Philippines, I made like this funny kind of mock-up cover of these Filipinos on a bus, and I mocked it up like a book cover of Robert Frank's The Americans, and instead of the Americans, it said the Filipinos, and I know that Robert Frank was Swiss, and he was traveling through America, and had this very subjective documentary view of America. But he came at it, he took 20,000 pictures and edited it down to 82. So I think that I'd like to have that same kind of approach that that you might be referring to, as far as like what will guide this. And I don't know if it's as ambitious as calling it the Filipinos, but it could. I think right now, calling it home and away is quite large in and of itself. And sometimes I want to focus on one person. Sometimes I want to focus it by country, or but it's kind of like a moving target right now. And the thing is that it's just one aspect of my travels there. There are other mini projects like that. Like I have something on the Bataan Death March, and that led me to, I wanted to document the trail and the markers, and like this trail of kind of unseen, it's a trail of death, but it's all just like foliage and grass but also people who live along that. So that inspired me to follow the trail of Walter Benjamin. He did did a hike, his last hike over the Pyrenees before he committed suicide as he was evading the Nazis. And I'm collaborating with my wife on a project on that project, and she's writing poems that relate to not only the landscape but also Walter Benjamin's experiences. So that isn't kind of a direct answer to what is guiding it, but I think I should keep going. I don't know, but it's hard to do when I'm not like around a lot of Philippine culture and people. So maybe my first sabbatical will will be spent in Los Angeles or Manila or New York.
I really hope you do. There's a lot of love for you in the chat, so I don't want you to miss that. I'd like for you to go through that.
Thank you.
I also really want to say hi to your mom, who's in the house.
Yeah.
And
Hello, Salud's iPad.
I always like it when mothers come to these. So, hey, Mom. It's great to have you here. And I also noticed a few people coming in now. It always happens when there's a time shift, like, we're in the Eastern time. And I wanted to let everybody know that this talk is going to be on YouTube by tomorrow. So you'll be able to catch up if you weren't able to join tonight. I'm
so thankful for this big list of people that I if I don't love them already, I will love you. It's so nice to see all these familiar names. Thank you so much for tuning in. and writing and making yourself known. That's so great.
I really feel like I need another hour, and hopefully when next time you come in Pennsylvania or next time I'm in Illinois, and it's safe to see each other, as I have lots of questions. I'm very excited about the work, and I wish you the best with it.
Thank you.
And
if people are, if people have questions, you can feel free to email me directly. I'd love to continue the conversation, and it's been really exciting to share this work because I've been kind of sitting on it for a little bit, but I feel like it's marinated enough to share. So again, thank you so much for everyone for showing up and